AI wasn't there to produce all of this average, competent, it can make 1,000 average blogs, 1,000 average videos. Now that that competent execution is here, what actually shines is creativity. There's a massive premium on original thinking, on going in new boundaries. And what's happened in most corporate cultures is that creativity has been dramatically suppressed. It's been viewed as risky. And so the bar has been raised relative to our level of creativity and independent thinking as well.
You're listening to HR Superstars, a podcast brought to you by 15Five. On this show, we talk to strategic people leaders who are making a meaningful impact in their organizations and shaping the future of work. So get ready to be inspired and discover the secrets behind building high-performing teams and fostering a culture of growth and thriving. The future of HR starts here. Hi, and welcome to HR Superstars. I'm your host and VP of People at 15Five, Karina Young. Now, AI is absorbing the work your managers have spent years mastering: analysis, synthesis, execution. And when that happens, what's left is the work only humans can do: judgment, discernment, and the ability to lead when, frankly, everything feels uncertain. That is both our opportunity and our biggest challenge right now, because most of our people development tools that HR relies on were built for a different job in a different era. That's why I'm excited to have our guest on today, Chris Walker, biomedical engineer, 5-time entrepreneur, and author of The Frequency Era. Chris makes the economic case, backed by 200 years of history and decades of neuroscience, that the human capacities AI can't touch are the ones that are about to become the most valuable for your organization to build. By the end of this conversation, you're going to know what those capacities are, why traditional development approaches won't get you there, and what you as an HR leader need to do differently starting now. Chris, welcome to HR Superstars. I'm so glad to have you. Before I get to some of your unique perspective around this era of AI transformation, I want to know more about you. How did you get from where you were a few years ago to this place today?
Well, amazing intro. This topic and this audience is something that I've become super passionate about in terms of organizational performance and, people well-being, development, getting so much more creativity and talent out of all the amazing people that we have in our businesses. And so how I got here, I guess, right? 6 years ago, right? I'm just a normal guy. I'm a director of marketing at a Series A startup. I was politely asked to leave from that company. And when I was asked to leave, the CEO looked at me on the way out and was just like, hey, I really don't think you should get another job. I think that you should be a consultant. And I'm like, a consultant? What do you mean? I have $3,000 in my bank account and $60,000 in student loan debt. I need a job, right? And so anyway, I gave it a shot for a little while, being a consultant, picked up some clients. All of a sudden, I'm making $500,000 a year doing that, and was off to the races in building my first. It was my third business, but my first real scalable business called Refine Labs. And during that, we basically just fundamentally challenged the way that companies think about getting customers and growing their business through marketing and sales, and looking at that through a new lens, including finance and business strategy and marketing and sales, and bringing it all together. And that business did amazing. We built an 8-figure business. We made a huge impact, and I exited that business about 12 months ago, and they're still doing amazing things for the industry, which is great. And during that time, I noticed some interesting things as we were going through it. You start to see patterns of, okay, so who are the customers that actually are successful in driving this level of organizational change, right? Thinking about sales and marketing in a totally different way. What are the things that consistently hold companies up, and they continue to stay in this stale old pattern and continue to get average results, or declining valuations and other challenges like that? And what I found is that the number one thing is what I'll call the frequency of your organization. And so people look at it, you could make a comparison in your mind to culture, but I actually view this as upstream to culture, meaning that culture is the visible expression of how people feel and the things that you do. But underlying that, there are drivers of why are we doing what we're doing, right? What do we believe in? Why do we reward certain behaviors? Why do we do certain things? What does it feel like in the leadership meeting? What does it feel like in the marketing, weekly stand-up? Do people feel creative? Do they feel empowered? Do they feel inspired? Or do they feel burnt out? Are they dreading going to this meeting? How many meetings did they have? And when you add, how are people making decisions? They have to defer decisions all the way up the chain. And then all of a sudden, the decision that should take 30 seconds now takes 3 months. So looking at all these different things, it's like this concept is actually the number one thing to business performance, but also employee well-being, retention, impact for our customers in our market, our partnerships. I just see it as such a powerful concept. And right now we're going through such a dramatic transition with the evolution and ongoing proliferation and development of AI that organizations must change. We must change how we operate and how we do things. And we're already seeing people react to the situation by collapsing hierarchies. We have less middle management. That's a natural and obvious outcome of this economic transition. And so that's how I got here. I hope you could feel the energy. I'm pumped to get deeper into it.
Oh, I love it. I mean, we've got a ton of different avenues to go down between frequency and what that means for organizations and all that. Let's start a little bit with AI transformation, because you have a bit of a unique perspective on how you look at AI transformation and what that means. Can you share some of that with our audience?
At the fundamental core of the thesis of my book, and basically everything that I think I'll probably pursue for the rest of my life, is that AI is inviting humans to elevate to their next level of capacity that they didn't even know they had. And so the way that I get here is that if you can imagine in 1950, a majority of humans, 65% of humans that participated in the economy, worked in a factory. They were the top 25% highest paying jobs. They were going to get a pension. They were viewed as the most valuable people in the economy. And during that time, nobody measured the IQ of a factory worker. Every factory worker did indeed have an IQ, and they did have the capacity to use a computer and to elevate to a new level of capacity and contribute to the economy in an elevated way. However, the economy didn't need it yet. And because the economy didn't need it, they were never driven to develop that capacity that we all had. And so the argument in the book, or the thesis of the book, is that AI is driving an elevation in capacity that humans didn't know they had, which is shifting from the information that I store in my brain and how I process that information to the power of my nervous system and all of the capabilities that get expressed from that before I start thinking or doing anything. And so a good way to put this into practice before we get deeper into it is that you do not decide whether you are going to be autonomous and adaptable or not. You don't think about it and choose to be adaptable. It's decided before you start thinking or doing anything. You're either adaptable human, you've built the capacity to be adaptable, or you haven't, right? We don't think about being emotionally intelligent. We either have developed the capacity to be emotionally intelligent, show up that way in meetings and everything in our life, or we haven't. And that gets decided before we think or do anything. And there's a variety of other ones. And so the concept of the book, and it's driven through tons of neuroscience and performance research and physiology, is that the most valuable capabilities in the future are the things that get trained and expressed before we think or do anything. And so I'm pumped to get deeper into that. There's some concepts that I think we'll tease in that I think are just super organizationally and economically relevant that people might be able to use as they share this concept with others. But I'll let you take it from here.
I think that's incredible, because as I'm listening to your story about this, right, and thinking about, right, 1950s factory worker who doesn't even know and realizes, you're saying like that they have this capability and capacity inside them to be the worker that the future needs, right, when that door is opened. So how does this connect, Chris, when the door gets opened and there is that what feels like a natural human reaction of fear, and to be scared of going through that? I can't do it. I don't have it. I don't want to do it. In fact, if you open the door, I'm going to actively try to close it. How do you help organizations? How do you think HR can really help organizations lead through that really natural tension?
I agree, right? I hear it from a variety of angles, the people that are doing research at the conferences and things like that. And basically the entire sentiment from senior leaders down to, middle managers or individual contributors is the number one thing that's on my mind is that I'm scared that AI is going to take my job. Pretty much, right? All the way up to a VP level. What that demonstrates is it demonstrates a lack of adaptability. Because, right, and this is an example, it's just an example, right? I don't view this situation as threatening, right? I built the capacity to deal with uncertainty, to thrive in it, right? I don't know where it's going to go, but I know that I have confidence that I'll be able to navigate this situation. I view this situation as the biggest opportunity of our lifetime for any individual. And so I'm just providing a different perspective because the interpretation of fear, right, is what it is. It's an automatic interpretation. It's actually not a fact for everybody that this is a scary or fearful time. So that's a perspective shift that indicates this lack of capacity and adaptability. Now, what I will say is that these, just like the IQ of the factory worker, right, because the economy has not forced them to be developed, it was never trained or developed. It was what I'll call underdeveloped, right? Things in the corporate workplace today, like true thinking for yourself, right? Not asking Gartner, not looking for a PDF, not looking at AI to give you the answer. True independent critical thinking has been undertrained, right? It's not that we don't have it. It's not that we don't have the capacity for it. It's just because the economy has given us these other routes that hasn't been trained. Adaptability has been undertrained because conditions move slowly. We could spend 2 or 3 quarters talking about it in a board meeting, and because things move slowly, it didn't hurt that badly. Now, as things are moving more quickly, this inability to be adaptable, to make decisions, to move and navigate this changing terrain becomes a liability. And so those are a couple of interesting examples. And then lastly, I just want to go to creativity. And so historically, right, because AI wasn't there to produce all of this average, competent, it can make 1,000 average blogs, 1,000 average videos, 1,000 average decks, anything. Now that competent execution is here, what actually shines is creativity. There's a massive premium on original thinking, on going in new boundaries. And what's happened in most corporate cultures is that creativity has been dramatically suppressed. It's been viewed as risky. And so people actually have suppressed their creativity and underdeveloped creativity in order to stay safe. Because there wasn't all this AI execution, that we just had producing something competent was good enough, right? And so the bar has been raised relative to our level of creativity and independent thinking as well.
It's a really interesting way to think about it, Chris, and put that reframe on it where so many people can see, again, this moment that we're in as a place of fear, like, how do I get to that next level? Something's being taken away from me. But if you look at it with just that abundance mindset of actually, like, this gives me an opportunity to tap into those things like creativity, critical thinking, adaptability, skills that maybe in the workforce in the last 10, 20 years were not always seen as highly valuable, but things people bring, unique things that can't be overtaken by AI, can really be given their space to grow and thrive in an organization.
Just measuring employee performance is no longer enough. 15.5 helps your HR team take action to maximize performance. With 15.5's performance management platform, you can easily set up review cycles, collect ongoing performance data, track employee goals, and deploy customized campaigns that empower managers to drive growth. Learn more at 15.5.com or click the link in the show notes.
I'm curious for you, how would you guide HR leaders in talking about what is the real opportunity for their organizations now to step into this AI evolution, as you call it? What are the things that they can say and do to really claim their place at the table right now?
I say this with an immense amount of empathy related to this position. And the core realization when we work through this is that the primary development target of all of our people needs to shift. That historically, when information was scarce, what did we do? We invested money for people to get information, to collect certifications, to learn certain things. That was where a majority of this organizational development budget went to, big conferences and PDFs and consultants and things like that. Now, when AI has made all that information abundant, now we have the ability to access that information. We can access it without going to the conference. We can access it without buying the $20,000 research report or PDF for the most part, right? I'm generalizing, but in a lot of cases, that's true. That investing all our money in helping our people learn more, the ROI on that is declining dramatically. And so to have a shift in our primary method of development, focusing less on the information that people have in their brain and way more in the capacity of their nervous system that allows them to express all of these things, becomes the primary method where we should be investing. Now, I realize, I'm not crazy. I realize what that will sound like if you bring that to an executive meeting or you bring that to your CEO right now. I totally understand it. Now, so what I want to illustrate here is that the economic relevance of these capacities are fundamentally well studied already, right? This is not a prediction. This is already true. If we think about what is the most critical single thing in an organization, it has to be clarity in decision making. It has to be we have 1,000 people in our company, right? Every person is making decisions. Our higher order executives are making very consequential decisions. It could be 5 or 10 a day. Outside of work, we are making decisions about our personal life, about our relationships, about our health all the time, right? So decision making, if you think about business success and life satisfaction and quality, decision making has to be the number one thing. Now, when the research is showing that the number one factor of decision quality is the internal state of the decision maker at the time they make the decision. Meaning, and when they say internal state, what they really mean is the state of their nervous system that then gets expressed in their emotions. And so if we have two people, two leaders, and one of them feels like they're in a rush, they feel urgent, they're having trouble outside of work and things like that. And then we have another leader that's calm, thinking clearly, being measured in their decisions. And we take that over a week, a month, a year, 5 years. The difference in the trajectory of those two people's decisions over time compound, and it has a massive impact on business success. And that can happen at all levels of the organization, but particularly critical for senior leaders. So that's one. The next one we think about is creativity, right? So if you buy into the idea that we need to have independent thinkers, we need to have people that come up with new ideas, that stop looking for best practices and start to learn to think for themselves, that push the boundaries of creativity, whether that's in marketing, in product, in any of the different areas in business, that what is the number one factor to a team's creative output? It's proven that it is the leaders of that team's ability to make everyone on the team feel safe. And so when we think about how do we make our team feel safe, it is actually feeling safe within ourselves. It is not feeling like we're in a rush, not feeling like we're falling behind, not like we're going to get fired next week if we don't, drive X, Y, and Z result. And so it's our responsibility as a leader of a business to create the conditions that everyone feels safe. And that is actually not that simple, right? I think a lot of people can talk about that, but actually doing that in practice is not that simple. Just those two things, creativity, independent thinking, decision-making. And then we think about this concept of just mental clarity, particularly for leaders that are thinking about strategy and vision in the future, but really it impacts all areas of the organization. Yeah. If we look at a 1,000-person company today, right, I would wager, or I would invite people to consider that we have all of these incredibly talented people. We have all of the AI. We have all the resources in the world. We can access all these consultants, PDFs. We have all the information, and nobody really knows what is the most important thing right now. So we have all the information, but we lack clarity. And so clarity is different than what most people think. Clarity is the ability to subtract information and decide what matters. And so it's actually a totally different cognitive operation than what most people have been trained to do. When information is scarce, the best strategy is to go out and get as much information as possible. But when information is abundant, if we're just collecting all this information, it actually creates cognitive load. It lowers decision quality because we have all this different information that conflicts with the decision-making process. And so this different concept called clarity is being able to look at 1,000 different pieces of information, say those 998 things don't matter, these two matter for us right now. And that is a premium skill and quality for senior leaders today. And the concept of mental clarity, again, like all these capacities, is decided before we think. We don't sit down and say, okay, now I'm going to think clearly, right? We don't decide whether we do or not. We either have mental clarity or we don't. And the way that I look at it, and I'm sure we'll get into this more deeply, is that it's similar to having a muscle. Like, let's think about our bicep, right? We all have one. The question is, how much have we trained it? Have we trained our muscle to be strong, or have we not, right? And so, but we all have the capacity to build it, right? And so that's the way that I look at mental clarity, creativity, decision-making, emotional regulation, adaptability, all of these, like what used to be considered soft skills, right, in the previous era. But I would argue that these skills are much harder to acquire and much more economically consequential than the hard skills of the previous era. So I think that calling them soft skills is a dramatic diminishing of the impact and importance of them.
Right. And maybe even just a term we need to retire completely as we
Please.
talk about this and as we talk to executive leaders. Because as I'm hearing you say this, I mean, thinking about, okay, if we want people to make good decisions, right? As you were just saying, like the most important factor is their internal state, what is happening inside of them. I can guarantee most organizations aren't spending time really thinking about that, right? And in fact, this heightened state of a lot of work, a lot of thoughts, a lot of stress, I think that some executives have misidentified that as actually the skill. Can you make a good decision in a high stress situation? Can I give you the most stimulation possible and see what you're going to do in that? And then let me up it and let's see what decision you make and let's do more and let's make more decisions versus what you were even just saying in this idea of clarity is instead of increasing everything we give to our leaders, how do we create that space for them to diminish the options around them, diminish the distractions and the elevations of their internal nervous system to make a decision from a clear state? It's just a really interesting flip on what I think has been the normal work state for most people. I even think about for myself, most of the companies I've been in is like, hey, the more you can do under pressure, the better. That's actually a great skill you're bringing. And so now what I hear you say is like, Karina, you've got to unlearn that. And I'm like, whoa, like that's a really wonderful invitation to this next state of work that we are going into. And I hope that HR leaders see that instead of we're losing something, like what can we really gain through what you're talking about?
So maybe a little bit of a nuance here, right? Because as you build the capacity, it allows you to make better decisions in stressful situations, right? So it's just like if you built the capacity to run a marathon, that it's less difficult to run the marathon than if you hadn't trained, right? So an output is that, yes, I can deal with uncertainty and pressure and things like that. I think the main point is that organizations artificially create stress and urgency and pressure that diminishes and decreases decision quality and team performance. And so it's more so cultivating the environment, right? We can be in an uncertain situation and also not have it be stressful, right? We can operate that way. And what I've found is that just generally that a majority of organizations, because of how they measure success, how they've been trained to operate, that they create artificial urgency, pressure, and stress, which ironically was a distinct advantage in 1995. That if we worked harder and we grinded more, then we would have a tangible advantage over another company that didn't, right? But now as information has become abundant, right, this shift with AI, the advantage is totally different. The advantage is if we can do everything now, it's what is worth doing, right? And so there's a whole different level of stuff, right? Easy example, you could see people out there that whatever, solopreneur, someone messing around, right? They're building 10 AI products that nobody wants, right? You can do all these things. The question is, what is worth doing now, right? We can build 1,000 blogs that are average and normal. Is that actually something that's worth doing? So I think there's a interesting parallel because what's happened, and I talk about this in my book quite a bit, is that the previous economic era had distinct assumptions. And because of those distinct assumptions, it created methodologies and specific advantages. And one of those advantages was working harder. Another one was getting best practices from experts. Another one was deferring our decisions to consultants. All of those things in the year 2000 were actually an advantage over the people that couldn't access the consultants, that couldn't pay Gartner, that didn't want to work hard. They were distinct advantages. And now, because the economic era is shifting, and many people do not even recognize that it's an economic shift driven by technology, it's not just that technology is making the current economic era faster, that there's a fundamental shift in where the value lies for humans. When that shift happens, the assumptions change. And when the assumptions change, the strategies must shift with them. It's a really cool thing because it creates a way for certain organizations to dramatically surpass other organizations. Imagine the people that were running factories in 1970, right? And then all of a sudden, you started having Microsoft, Apple, Google, these people that totally shifted. Where is the value? They were leveraging technology, but they had shifted totally of, I'm going to stop working in a factory. I'm going to start being a knowledge worker. I'm going to hire knowledge workers. And so it was a total economic shift that created massive opportunity for everybody. And we're in the midst of that right now as well.
And so if the value now is on what you're describing, right, as mental clarity, independent thinking, creativity, high quality decision making, how does HR actually train those muscles? Like, what are the things we need to be doing differently for our organizations?
To summarize, right, the book shares basically this very interesting paradigm going on, which is that before we haven't appreciated the distinction, but now we must, which is there's a difference between what we'll call human intelligence versus artificial intelligence. And that human intelligence are the things that only a human can do. Think clearly, be creative. The limitations of AI mean that it will never come up with a new idea. It will make new patterns of existing ideas, but because all it's doing is drawing on an existing knowledge base, it can fundamentally not come up with a new idea. AI also, like if you just say, okay, AI, just make all my decisions for me, right? AI is not going to know what's right for you in that moment with your family and your business and your life. It's going to give you a generalized answer about what happened in the past, right? And so there's certain things that just fundamentally AI cannot do that a human can, and recognizing that creates some clarity on where I should focus in the future. The shift for people, talent, HR leaders is that what's happened is that personal and professional development have now converged. And that historically, professional development, the things that were extensible, were going to conferences, learning information, taking a course, and those things were extensible. But over here, if somebody was going to, a retreat or to do a meditation class or to do something else, that was considered a personal development side quest. That it was not expensible, that sure, you can do that on your own if you wish, but that's for you in your personal life, and this business stuff is over here. Now, what's happened is that now they're the same, that the quality of the human that they bring to work is now the most important thing, and so the budgets need to converge, and we need to think differently around what development of our people actually means. And so I think that's the major unlock here, is that one is that we need to think about the development of the person across their entire life, across how everything's going at home, how they feel, emotions and how people feel or what they've been doing, and going to therapy has been treated as, oh, you go and take care of that stuff on your own. Now I see that as something that is totally economically relevant to our company. Not that I'm recommending any of those specific approaches. I'm just separating the difference between what we said, oh, you go do that over here, you spend your money on that, because that doesn't really matter that much for our business, versus the things that we think are valuable to our business, and now seeing them more as thinking about them in the same thing. So it's way more about the human than just the skills that they've learned.
What does it look like when an organization is doing this well? What can HR leaders, I think just any business leader, expect to feel different? What are the different behaviors that they're going to start seeing in their company that aren't there right now?
Number one is it must start with the leader. the CEO, the president, whatever you call that person, if they're not doing it, other people will feel better. But honestly, if other people at other elevations of the organization start to do this and the leader isn't, then those people will most likely leave. They will eventually become incompatible with the environment that the leader is creating. And another thing is that no matter how calm or clear or creative an organization tries to be, if you are controlled by the board and the capital that requires ridiculous returns on fast timelines, it's almost fundamentally impossible without shifting the thinking of your board and your capital stack to try and implement this. And so I think it creates an interesting advantage because companies that historically have been bootstrapped or, thought about their capital in a different way used to be at a disadvantage, right? I couldn't hire 30 developers. I need 30 developers to build faster and things like that. Those advantages don't exist that much anymore. You can now build the same thing with 2 developers as you used to with 30 with 2 good engineers, and that not having the baggage and expectations that come with the capital can allow you to create an environment where people can be creative, think independently, and things like that. It's not a black and white answer, but there is definitely a pattern here. But back to how do we do this? Number one is to focus on having the leader, the actual leader, the CEO, care about this, to see it as economically relevant and for it to be part of our business strategy, right? Not a side thing that we do for emotional, employee well-being and happiness, but a top 3 priority in our company to build an organization that has the environment to thrive in the future. Because if we do not, we will be at an ongoing disadvantage as the technology continues to proliferate. So to see it as a strategic advantage is the first thing, which I think is amazing because it just isn't looked at that way right now. It's seen as like this is a nice to have thing, but now I see it as the number one thing in a company is actually this. So to see it that way, to then have our leaders, right? Whether it's our board, definitely our CEO, and potentially some other people in the organization, to spend time focusing on it, to see it occur in their life, how they feel more calm, how they show up differently to the team meeting, how they handle uncertainty or, artificial pressure differently than they did 6 months ago, how they think more clearly, make better decisions, ignore these different things, feel what it's like to operate in that way, because I don't think most people even know what it feels like for the most part. So it's almost like you've opened up this whole nother world of like, whoa, I didn't even know that I could do all of these things. It really is like that. But to have the leadership team experience it, and we have probably from our Encoded perspective, probably 4 or 5 leadership teams pioneering it across the whole team. We have 500 CEOs using it, but from a whole leadership team, maybe five companies piloting it. And the difference in the organizations, how the talent moves in and moves out, how everything operates, it's just, you can look at what people quote on it. It's just like this, I didn't know it was this effortless to run my business. I didn't know it was like this. And so that becomes an advantage. And then to think about it at a middle manager and individual contributor after that. Some of the things that I think have been challenges in HR up to this point is that we give these tools to our middle manager and individual contributors, but we don't use them ourselves. And it's like, if we really buy into this and we see it as a strategy and we expect all of our other people to invest 20 minutes a day to do it, then why aren't we? If it's that important, and we think it is. And so I really think that we need to be thinking about it differently as leaders and, walking the walk, so to speak.
As an HR leader, you have a critical role in managing an organization's most valuable asset, its people. However, despite the importance of your role, other executives may not see the value of having HR leaders at the executive table. This is why we crafted the HR Outcomes Playbook. It's designed to help you close that gap and operate in a way that enlightens and excites the rest of the executive team and shows them that HR can provide value to an organization's bottom line. Get your copy at the link in the show notes now.